Happy Friday morning, everybody. Welcome into Morning JOX here on JOX 94.5. Appreciate you making us part of your weekday each and every morning here as we set off on another weekend. And this will be our last day of shows here before we are in Atlanta next week for SEC Media Days. So a lot of excitement there. About what we are going to hear from Alabama, Auburn, as well as the 14 other member institutions of the Southeastern Conference. And, of course, the Commissioner Greg Sankey, as I think we all imagine, the college football playoff format. And those discussions will be a heavy topic of conversation next week, just like they were earlier this week at Big 12 Media Day. So a lot for us to get into. But, hey, Damien, it's Friday. We made it through another week, and can't complain about that.
Yeah. It's been an interesting week to say the least. I think that early on, AJ McCarron kind of ruled the day yesterday. It was kind of one of those things where you got it from both sides. Like, you got Auburn fans that were rightfully upset, but there were also Alabama fans that were upset as well. Of just, we appreciate what you did for the University of Alabama, but you kind of put your foot in your mouth. But he's also just getting started in this media space, and it comes with a lot. Whatever you say on these microphones, it tends to travel.
Yeah, and I think yesterday, this is just based on what we saw here on JOX with y'all, our great listeners, and our interaction with y'all either on the phone line, text line, social media, whatnot. But I feel like the majority of Alabama fans that we heard from yesterday actually did not support a lot of what he had to say. Now, in the sense of, I think a lot of it was, okay, from a football standpoint, yeah, we get it. Like, if you want to go to the NFL, Alabama's probably a better spot for you to do that. But, insinuating that people are dumb for going to Auburn, or, even, it's just, it goes to show there is class in the rivalry, I think. Just when you have Alabama fans that say, okay, maybe that's a little too far. That's not something that we necessarily all agree with. But hey, you know what? He'll figure it out. That's what happens. As you will learn, you can be a fan of a program or a school, and you can support them. And even in his case, I'm sure Greg would be able to relate to him on the amount of times that Alabama fans have said they don't like Greg for the way that he says certain things. So it's just part of being in the business. But I did think it was interesting that maybe didn't get as much love from the Alabama fans as that was expected. But yeah, that was the big drama yesterday. And so today we are going to start previewing, as I said, SEC Media Days and taking a look ahead to that. And how are we going to do that, Damien? With a ranking of the best head coaches in the SEC. So the Sporting News was very nice to go out and put out a list ranking all 16 head coaches ahead of Media Days. So we will share that with you coming up here in a little bit. And Alabama fans probably going to be pretty happy. Auburn fans maybe not as happy, but I don't know. Some of you might agree with the list. So we'll share that with you coming up here in just a little bit. But before we get into college football stuff, do want to recap real quick last night like we do each and every day, even though I know at this point a lot of you probably wish we would just stop because you don't want to hear about it yourself. But that would be the Atlanta Braves as they were in action last night with the just the Athletics. I forgot. We can't call them the Oakland Athletics anymore.
It's a hard habit to break.
It is. It's just like JOX, like some things, you just got to get used to a little bit. But you have, so Atlanta, they were taking on the Athletics last night. The Athletics go up 3-0 in the first inning on a 3-run home run. Then Atlanta would battle back and take a 4-3 lead in the seventh. You had Sean Murphy with an RBI double, Jerkson Profar with a 2-run home run in the fourth inning to tie it up at 3. Then Ozzie Albies hits a solo shot in the seventh to put you up 4-3. Then you have everyone's favorite player on the Athletics, Nick Kurtz, who hits a home run in the eighth inning to make it 4-4. And then you go to extra innings, and Soderstrom hits an RBI single in the bottom of the 11th to walk it off for the Athletics. So they take 2 of 3 from Atlanta. Spencer Strider last night, 6 2/3, 3 earned runs, 11 strikeouts for the Braves. So overall pretty solid outing from him. You can't ask for a whole lot more than that. But the good news is at least Landrum was wrong. He said he bet last night that the Braves wouldn't score more than 3 runs and they would lose. And they scored 4 runs, but they still lost. So unfortunately, not a great series there for Atlanta. They're now 40-52 on the season, and you have one more series coming up before the All-Star break next week, which will be in Atlanta at Truist. If you have somehow missed that, but they will be taking on the St. Louis Cardinals. So a chance against a pretty good team to maybe get a little bit of momentum going into the All-Star break, but let's be honest, it's just not looking super great right now. But that game is going to be 7:15 tonight, first pitch here on JOX. The Braves now 13.5 games out in the National League East. And as it stands in the wild card right now, if you're an Atlanta Braves fan, you are 10 games back. So a lot of ground to make up there. And I know it's been a long season for a lot of you, and we will see what the trade deadline holds for the Atlanta Braves. But do want to give a quick update, just real quick, around Major League Baseball. Also, shout out to my team, the New York Yankees, last night. They were, after 7 innings, were being no hit, and they were down 5-0, and they came back and won in extra innings on a sac fly by Aaron Judge and a fantastic slide by Volpe to get him in there. So that was very impressive. Have to shout out my New York Yankees last night for their win. But
and also, a Yankee will be representing a home run derby too.
Jazz Chisholm is going to be in the home run derby.
He's not the first one that comes to mind when I think of
No.
When it comes to dropping home runs there, especially as a Yankee, but. Shout out to Jazz.
Yeah, no, he's good, man, and it'll be fun. I always get scared when people do the home run derby on like the team you root for, because you just don't want it to mess up their swing. Because there's guys in the past have said, yeah, I mean, you're trying to put on a show, and it can maybe mess some things up for a couple weeks after the All-Star break. But it'll be cool to see him represented there. And I'm still trying to. I'm telling Landrum he needs to get Barrett. I don't want tickets to the home run derby or the game. I want to be one of the kids on the field. Catching the fly balls during the home run derby. That's what I want.
Yeah, that sounds like a bucket list thing.
Yeah, I've always thought that would be so much fun.
I mean, I could see you going out there, shoving a little 7-year-old out the way because you're trying to get, an out.
Well, it would just be really sad because they'd probably, somebody would be like, oh, okay, he's probably going through something really rough and he just really wanted this opportunity. And it's like, no, that's just a 29-year-old dude out there. Like, really? Like, there's nothing wrong with him. No, he just living the dream. He really just wanted to do this. Like, okay. But it'll be fun next week in Atlanta regardless. I'm sure a handful of you are going to be making your way over there. But quickly, as we do approach the All-Star game, just a quick update around baseball. In the American League, you have the Blue Jays in first place in the AL East. They're up 2 games on the Yankees. The Tigers in first place in the Central. They have a 13-game lead over Kansas City in the Central already. And the Houston Astros with a 7-game lead in the NL West right now. You have the Phillies with a 1.5 game lead over the Mets in the NL East. The Cubs have a 2-game lead over the Brewers in the NL Central, and the Dodgers with a 5-game lead in the NL West. So that's where things currently stand as we approach All-Star Week. So yesterday, if I don't know how many of you may have seen this, but a former, a lot of you from his time at Georgia, a great player at Georgia, also some of his time on television, that would be one Mr. David Pollack. So he does a new podcast now, and I'll be honest, I had never listened to this podcast before yesterday, but it's called See Ball, Get Ball with David Pollack, and he had a very special guest yesterday that was a head coach of a football program here in the state of Alabama who's maybe faced a lot of questions about recruiting and his extracurricular activities. So Hugh Freeze was on this podcast with David Pollack yesterday, and this is him addressing the golf narrative as well as the recruiting narrative and just kind of more on the house settlement, Auburn's approach, and the media's perspective on all of it.
So, Coach, you mentioned a lot of people were talking about your golf game, and obviously it's sort of talking season and media days are coming up next week. Do you have do you plan hey, I've got a speech or I'm just going to wing it, or how do you go about prepping for the event that it has now become SEC Media Days?
Yeah, I really have never been a big planner for that. I just kind of like to be transparent and truthful. And I know that, people, this is that time where people are looking for things to write about. And I do love golf. I enjoy playing. It gets away. But what people don't realize is it's probably, I assure you, I never missed a camp day or a recruiting day but if camp got over at 3:00 one day and Jill and I go out at 4:30, we absolutely might do that. And I'm not apologizing for that part of it, but my focus is 100% on getting Auburn in that win column this fall. And I think the biggest thing that's causing most of it is the recruiting rankings right now, because we've been top 10, my 2 years here in recruiting, and currently we're not. And good Lord, we could spend 30 minutes on why I think that is, but there's a lot of people right now that are operating under a different set of rules on what their interpretation is of this settlement and how you should operate. And I'm going to operate in the manner that our administration has interpreted it. And we'll see. I think it's a long game play for us that I think is going to work out in our favor. Because we're doing it very transparent and the way we believe the settlement is written to operate, if that makes any sense. And the other thing that nobody talks about, I don't listen to much. I'm not on social media anymore. My daughter does it. But Freeze is not getting this receiver in state, and he's not getting, do y'all realize on paper, I'm not losing a single receiver. And so how do you do that? This is not like David in the old days where you just sign 25 guys and then you figure out, who the 85 are. This is actually a salary cap world. And I like our receiver room. And how do I go and make offers to other receivers at numbers that these other schools are when I'm like, come January, I kind of want to keep the one I have. Does that make sense? I don't think the fine moms of the world or any of them think about all that. They just say he's playing golf and not recruiting. And so, and it's just a lot of dynamics that are into it right now. And I'm confident that our staff, we have not changed a single approach to our recruiting. People love it when they come to Auburn, but there's just a lot of dynamics that go into their decisions currently. And come August 1, everybody's got to put this in writing now, and it will. We'll see where everything shakes out after that.
So that was Hugh Freeze yesterday on the See Ball Get Ball podcast with David Pollock. So a little bit to unpack there as he chimed in on his golf game and how he's not going to apologize for when he's gets done with practice or his duties for the day if he hits the golf course. He says he's never going to miss a day of camp to go play golf or anything like that. And some interesting comments on recruiting as well. And that's kind of where I want to continue this. Hearing that again from Hugh Freeze as an Auburn, if you're an Auburn fan, does that make you feel better when you hear them talk about it more? Does it make you feel more confident that they have the right idea and you're on the right path? Does it make you less confident, or is it really just kind of a non-factor? And you're like, this is kind of the same thing we heard again. I think there's one thing in particular that I did want to pick out of that and bring up, but want to get your reaction as well. 205-834-9450 to Hugh Freeze and his comments on the podcast with David Pollock. We'll give our thoughts. We'll get yours next on Morning JOX. 6:19, welcome back into the Friday edition of Morning JOX. Conrad and Damian here with you until 7 o'clock when we hand you off to McElroy and Kubelik in the morning. A reminder that we will be out at SEC Media Days in Atlanta on Monday with wall-to-wall coverage here starting at 6 a.m. So very excited about next week, and hopefully many of you are as well, as, again, it is for a lot of us the official kickoff of college football season, and you can taste it right about now. So looking forward to a big week next week. But this morning we just shared some audio from Hugh Freeze. If you've missed any parts of the first segment, he was on a podcast with David Pollock yesterday and just kind of opened up a little bit. He talked more about, this season and some of the things going around with the team and the current roster as well during the podcast. But the part that everybody was interested in and gravitated towards, obviously, was the stuff about recruiting and his golf game. And so if you missed it, to paraphrase quickly, he doesn't ever miss any football-related functions or responsibilities in order to play golf. It's more a case of, hey, if he gets an early day out of practice or out of camp, whatever, then him and his wife might head up to the golf course and go play a round of golf, and that's how he likes to relax and spend his free time, and he's not going to apologize for that, and that is that. And on the recruiting front, he continued to essentially just double down on what this new philosophy is for Auburn of kind of playing wait and see until August 1st. And the one thing that, I thought was interesting was at the end of the clip, he brings up an example of, well, if I want to go out and recruit or saying that I guess people have said, well, why didn't you go and recruit this wide receiver? And I think we can, again, not putting words in anybody's mouth, but I think we can all assume that you're probably talking about Sadarian Morgan, who is a 5-star receiver in the state of Alabama, who committed to Alabama last week. And, his response to that scenario was essentially, well, if I have receivers on my roster that I already like and I want to keep for next year, well, why am I going to go promise that money to some high school kid when I'd rather have that money ready to bring back a Cam Coleman, Malcolm Simmons, Perry, one of those guys you already have on your roster. And while I understand that mindset, and I can absolutely understand where that would cause, problems and force you to make some interesting decisions as far as recruiting goes, I totally get that. I will also say this. Now, granted, Sadarian Morgan, that's a special talent. That's a dude that you would absolutely love to have. I don't think the criticism necessarily is, hey, Auburn, why did you not go get more 5-star receivers to add to your class? And I get, maybe that's not the point he's trying to make, but to me, it almost comes off a little bit like he's throwing himself a softball question a little bit of like, oh, well, why would I go out and get a receiver? I'm not worried about receiver. What are you doing on the offensive line? What are you doing on the defensive line? What are you doing at linebacker? Like, those are the spots that you need. And he brought up the quarterback position later as well in a different clip of essentially saying, well, how am I supposed to go and commit or recruit a 5-star quarterback and say, hey, you want to come sit behind Jackson Arnold and Deuce Knight and learn? Like, and I totally understand that. But again, I think the Auburn fan base in general isn't looking at those two. Like, you're choosing the two positions on your team to cherry pick that you have some good depth at, right? I think the question comes, what are you doing at those other positions that you need reinforcements now? So a little bit of that felt like maybe you're asking yourself a bit of a softball question, kind of taking an easy way out. Because again, I don't think it necessarily addresses the issue at hand there, but it is an interesting concept just in general of having to balance roster retention and recruiting. And if you have a position with a lot of talent, which to Auburn's credit, they've recruited really well at wide receiver, maybe that does mean you take a year off from that position at the recruiting level. I don't know if you had similar thoughts, Damian, or what you took away from that clip of Hugh Freeze and just hearing him talk more about the recruiting.
I understand kind of what he's saying as far as he's more worried about what the 2025 season is going to look like, and he thinks that, because it's the summer, it's going to take care of itself in the fall. And again, everybody talks about, what him and A.D. Cohen said about August 1st, where everything has to be in writing. Mm-hmm. And to me, I'm interested just to see what the landscape is going to look like on August 1st, because Auburn is the only school I've heard, look at that date and say, hey, read the room of August 1st and see exactly what's going to happen, because, these guys can say they're committed, but once they kind of look at, if they don't sign or the ink isn't dry and they have some things in a quote unquote contract to see how everything goes, then a lot of these things could be different. So I think that for Coach Freeze, he understands what is at stake this fall, and I think that's where his focus is really on. Like, he has to recruit, he has to continue to keep players on the roster for this season, because he knows that in the event that something bad happens, then everybody's going to be looking at him and asking the same questions that they were asking pretty much at this point of, well, why weren't you recruiting? If you know the future is going to look a little grim, at least put us in a good foundation, at least have some sort of foundation to fall back on, which, again, he's had 2 top 10 classes since he's been there. So it's, again, all it comes down to is what you do on the football field. Like, that is the end-all, be-all. Because if we're here in October, November, and Auburn's, got about 7-8 wins, we're like, okay, well, yeah, remember talking about over the summer how he was golfing and he wasn't recruiting? Well, it's because he was focused and he knew what he had he knew what he had on his roster this fall. So I think that for Hugh, he has to be the one that's in front of it. So he does a great job of addressing just every single thing. Like, he's right in front of it. He's like, hey, I'm golfing. Like, no ands, there's a buts about it. I'm not sorry. Like, if I got some time, I'm going to hit the links. Like, it is what it is. But he made sure to say, like, I'm not skipping anything that has anything to do with football, but if we get done a little early, so be it. I'm going to that's his prerogative. He can do whatever he wants. But I think that what it comes down to is the results between the white lines. That's all that matters at this point. And I think that's where Hugh Freeze is really starting to hone in of, I got to make sure I have the roster that I need, and everything else will take care of itself on the back end.
And I certainly agree with what you're saying, and where the emphasis seems to be on the upcoming season, because at the end of the day, right, if you have a bad season, it's probably not going to matter recruiting-wise, at least in Hugh Freeze's mind, because you're probably thinking, well, I'm not going to be there, right? So I really need to win this year, and I'm not going to, if you're taking the approach of we're prioritizing retaining our talent versus going out and getting new talent, I can't knock you for that, right? If you want to go to battle with the Jimmies and Joes you have in your locker room right now, then by all means, go for it. But I do think one thing that, some people might take away from that clip with the recruiting thing too is just the idea that people still love coming to Auburn, which I'm not saying they don't love going to Auburn, but saying people still love coming to Auburn. We haven't changed our approach at all. And then you're going to have some people going, okay, so is it strictly just a money thing, or what is, if you're not changing your approach and this is the situation, is it just a money thing, or is it a situation where maybe it's time to change the approach a little bit? Because, again, it worked the last couple of years, but I can't tell you how many stories and podcasts and things I've listened to and read over the last couple of weeks of different people around college football. Man, recruiting's different now. This year has been so much different. It just feels like things are changing, and maybe they are. And again, who knows? Maybe Auburn's right on track. Maybe they're a little behind the 8 ball. Maybe they're ahead of the 8 ball. We don't really know, and we'll find out soon enough. But again, I think it's just one of those things where you hear your coach say, oh, we haven't changed anything, and the results are drastically worse than they have been the last couple of years. That's going to, I think, inevitably raise a couple of questions there. So I just wanted to have a quick conversation about what Hugh Freeze said on his interview with David Pollack yesterday. So some interesting stuff there, and I know some of you chiming in on the courtesy GMC text line as well, and so we will get to some of those coming up. But we talked about it earlier in the show, and what better way to kick off SEC Media Days, Damian, than with a ranking of the head coaches of the SEC. So that's what the Sporting News went out and did to preview Media Days, and we will tell you 1 through 16. Where is Kalen DeBoer? Where is Hugh Freeze? Where is Josh Heupel? And others. We'll tell you next on JOX. .632 here on your Friday morning. Appreciate you making Morning JOX a part of your morning routine here. Conrad and Damian sharing with you, giving our thoughts on some of Hugh Freeze's comments about recruiting at Auburn as he was on with David Pollack on his new podcast here yesterday. And we're going to get to our SEC power rankings for the head coaches heading into Media Days. But quickly, Damian, this text did come in on the GMC text line. It says, with Deion Sanders, Mike Gundy, and others echoing what Hugh Freeze and John Cohen said about revenue sharing and schools offering money, what are your thoughts? Both said exactly what Auburn has said about teams offering deals early. Auburn played more freshmen than any other SEC school last year. That's more money to retain starters in their deal. It's not that hard to understand.
Okay. So
after hearing the stuff from the Big 12, does it make you believe that Auburn and Hugh Freeze have the right idea about this recruiting thing? Do you feel any different about it than you did on Monday?
No.
Okay.
No. And also, I mean, if the biggest thing is the roster, so are you willing to sacrifice, let's say every 2 years, that you're going to be in the bottom part of recruiting because you want to keep the roster that you have? is it worth it? Like, because if that's that, I get what he's saying as far as they're playing so many young guys that like it's hard to recruit. But that's the thing about college athletes, like they're going to cycle year after year after year. So, is it? I don't know. Like I guess.
Well, my concern would be
is more quality over quantity now,
and also maybe that's part of it. But I look at it as okay, you're banking on retaining all this talent, which is great if you can do it. But you think none of these kids are going to go to the portal? And I'm not saying that is. I mean, that's any school, right? If you're sitting here planning out, oh well, I'm not going to spend money on recruits because we're going to spend money on retaining that talent. What guarantees do you have that you're going to be able to keep those kids there regardless, right? So that would be my kind of pushback to that. But look, I mean, there's more credit to it if you want to say that with the Big 12 coaches getting involved and sharing their piece at media days this week. But I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, the one thing that hasn't changed is we're just going to have to wait and see, right? We will find out in August if Auburn was right, if Auburn was wrong, and what that means for Alabama and other schools around the SEC. So I kind of, because I'm with you, like, it makes me think a little bit more, but it doesn't change my opinion on anything because we don't know what's going to, like, Hugh Freeze doesn't know what's going to happen, right? He's doing what his people are telling him, just like, Kalen DeBoer is doing what his people are telling him at Tuscaloosa, and Kirby Smart's doing what his people tell him in Athens, and, that's the way it goes all around the country. So, but appreciate you sending that text, and I thought that was an interesting thought there. But we did mention it. If you're just now joining us, we were going to get to some SEC head coach power rankings ahead of media days. So the Sporting News has been kind enough. They actually ranked every coach in college football. So maybe after media days, we'll come back to this and go through the rest of the list. But I'm going to give you where they have the 16 head coaches ranked in the SEC, but I'll also tell you where they have them ranked in the overall picture of college football, right? So there's 134 coaches. I'll tell you where they rank within that 134. So number one, no surprise, Damian. Number one in the SEC and number one overall, the best coach in college football, according to the Sporting News, Kirby at Georgia.
No question about it.
Yeah, not a big surprise there. All right, how about this at number two? So the second best coach in the SEC, fifth best overall in the country, Steve Sarkisian.
The resume does speak for itself.
Back-to-back playoffs,
Big
expectations this year. I certainly think you would have a lot of people in agreement with that. How about at number three? So he's number three in the SEC, number 6 overall. So right behind Sark is a man that hasn't ever lost to Sark before, last time I checked. That would be Kalen DeBoer at Alabama.
No problem with it at all.
Seems fair. Can't argue with that. I think you could make a good argument that he could potentially, if Alabama has a really good year, maybe you move him up a spot. If they have a really disappointing year again, maybe you move him down a spot, and this guy gets bumped up. So the fourth best coach in the SEC, Brian Kelly at LSU. No problem with that. He is ranked as the 9th best coach in all of college football as well.
They're 4 for 4.
4 for 4. All right, how about this? Rounding out their top 10, so this will make 5 coaches. So half of the top 10, according to the Sporting News, 5 of the top 10 coaches in college football are in the SEC. Number 5, Lane Kiffin.
The proof is in the pudding.
Okay. I thought you might have this guy ahead of him, because right behind Lane Kiffin, at number 11 in the country, would be Josh Heupel, the 6th best head coach in the SEC. Feel pretty good about that?
Yeah. Listen, the 5 that are ahead of him, I am perfectly fine with.
Can't argue with that. Would you have him ahead of Lane because he's made a playoff, though?
It's worth the discussion, but Lane has the head-to-head.
And he's just more of a track record. Well, some of it maybe not as good, but he's
right.
He's been around.
He's been around, yeah.
He's been around. All right, number 7, coming in as the 21st best coach in all of college football, 7th best in the SEC, Eli Drinkwitz.
The last 2 years has helped him out tremendously.
Absolutely.
They have helped him out tremendously.
And I wouldn't be surprised, and nothing against him. I like Drink. I think he's a good coach. I think he's a really cool guy. But, depending on how this season goes, I think that's somebody you would not be surprised if he was maybe a little bit lower next year. But, again, that's another guy. If Missouri goes out and wins 9 games again this year, I think Drinkwitz is gone. In the sense of
he's going to get a bigger job.
He's going to be very in demand for a bigger job somewhere else. But we'll wait and see. Just throwing that out there. All right, number 8, we're halfway done. Mike Elko at Texas A&M. They have him as the 26th best coach in college football. I would maybe have this guy behind him, a spot ahead of him.
I would swap him.
But to be fair, Mike Elko, what he did at Duke was incredibly impressive. And this is maybe some recency bias from last year. But at number 9 and the 40th best, so there's a little bit of a gap here. So Mike Elko was the 8th best coach in the SEC, 26 overall. Now we're going to number 9. They have him as the 40th best coach overall, and that's Shane Beamer.
I would have those two swapped.
I think, I don't think you'd get a lot of pushback on that. I think this one's interesting because this is somebody that may be on an even hotter seat than Hugh Freeze is this year, and that's Brent Venables at Oklahoma. They have him as the 10th best coach in the SEC, 41st overall. Again, you did have the big win over Alabama last year. You had a couple years ago with Dylan Gabriel when you were really good, but he's had 2 rough seasons in Oklahoma.
He is 22-17 as a head coach.
Yeah, and I guess when you get to this point, though, you have to realize that the other guys that are low on this list, maybe we like them because we know certain things about them or their program, or we like what they did last year and we like, the expectations for this year. But when you go and look at the resume, it kind of makes sense because at number 11 is Billy Napier. They have him as 44th overall.
And see, I would have him higher than Brent Venables.
I would probably do that too, but his record would be worse than Brent Venables.
Right. I think I look at both of the programs in which they got him. Like, especially for Brent Venables. Like, Lincoln had that thing rolling. It was tailor-made for you, and you've gone out and hadn't really, had your end of the bargain. Whereas for Billy Napier, everything was gutted. Like, it was kind of just gutted a little bit, and it was down, and he had to do a lot more building up to get to where he is. And I think that last year really kind of showed me that if you give him time and get out of his way, he can show you exactly what he can do. Like he did it with a freshman at quarterback that he necessarily didn't want to be on the field at the time, but then you saw him get better and better game after game.
Yep.
And now going into this season, it's, man, how good can they potentially be?
Yeah, I'm a bit of a believer in Sunbelt Billy this year, so hopefully we'll see if they can meet the expectations that have been set out for him, but I know a lot of people expecting a lot from Napier and the Gators this year. All right, moving along, there's somebody we haven't heard yet, so we got to keep going. At number 12, Mark Stoops at Kentucky. Probably would have bumped him down a couple personally.
Hear me when I say this. He is 28-62 in SEC play.
That's really good, Damian. That's 28 more wins than either of us have in SEC play.
It's fair.
That's really bad. That's bad.
That is.
It's not Chad Morris level, but it's not.
It's
good.
atrocious.
It's not good.
But he's one of the highest paid in the league. But
they love him.
They do. That's why it's a basketball school.
They love him. That's absolutely right. All right, we got to keep going though because we still haven't heard one coach here in the state of Alabama. So number 13, Sam Pittman at Arkansas. I would definitely bump him up a couple spots. Again, the
disrespect.
I think we're a little maybe biased towards Sam Pittman because we love the guy so much. But, I think he's a pretty darn good football coach. It's just, again, he's had some slim pickings of things to work with. But, hey, you could also say that's his fault because he's, running the program. But at number 14, here we go. Now, we found him. Hugh Freeze at Auburn. According to the Sporting News, Hugh Freeze is the 14th best head coach in the SEC, 53rd best coach in all of college football. Number 15, Clark Lee at Vanderbilt. He comes in as the 60th best coach overall. And last place, Mr. Jeff Lebby at Mississippi State, 79th overall. Can't.
Yeah.
But he's young, right? It's only his second year, or this is only his second year as a head coach. So a lot of time left for Jeff Lebby to make his mark there at Mississippi State. But if you're just now joining us, we went through the Sporting News. They ranked all of the SEC head coaches heading into media days. So your top 3, Kirby Smart, Steve Sarkisian, and then Kalen DeBoer comes in 3rd, and all the way down at 14 is Hugh Freeze and the Auburn Tigers. So we want to get your reaction, 205-834-9450, 1-800-239-9569 if you want to text or call in. And where do you think Kalen DeBoer and Hugh Freeze should be? Who do you think was maybe massively overrated, underrated? All that good stuff. We want to get your reaction next on the Friday morning edition of Morning JOX. Welcome back into the Friday edition of Morning JOX. Conrad and Damian here with you until 7 o'clock when we hand you off to McElroy and Kublik in the morning. Of course, they're with you 7 to 10. That will be Greg, Cole, Damian, and Saber. Then I'm back from 10 to 2 with Landrum and Molly for three-man front. And, of course, the Paul Feinbaum show coming your way after that. And Atlanta Braves on 7:15 first pitch tonight as they will take on the St. Louis Cardinals. You can hear that all here on JOX. And if you're just now joining us this morning, we just went through the sporting news and their rankings of all 16 SEC head coaches heading into media days. And you had at the top of the list, unsurprisingly, Kirby Smart of Georgia. They have him as not only the best coach in the SEC, but the best coach in all of college football. I don't think you're going to see a lot of pushback on that one. You had Steve Sarkisian coming in second, Kalen DeBoer third, Brian Kelly fourth, and Lane Kiffin fifth. So that's your top five in the SEC. And then you had Hugh Freeze all the way down at number 14. So you had Hugh Freeze at 14, Clark Lee at 15, and Jeff Lebby at 16. So that's your top of the barrel and bottom of the barrel, according to the sporting news. And we want to get to some of your reaction on the text line really quick. But quickly, if you were wondering, because we were just kind of going through the list, the excerpts of what they wrote about both Kalen DeBoer and Hugh Freeze and their rankings. For Kalen DeBoer, it says, replacing a legend is never a simple task, and DeBoer learned that firsthand during his 9-4 inaugural season, snapping a 16-year run of 10 or more wins since Nick Saban's first year back in 2007. But after a highly successful offseason on recruiting trail and a largely returning roster, hope springs eternal in Tuscaloosa, and Kalen DeBoer's overall success with a career record of 113-16 certainly bodes well for further improvement in year two.
Like, do you hear that? 113-16.
Pretty good record, Damian.
And people continue to question if he knows how to coach ball.
Well, he only did it at Sioux Falls, so people don't get it. It doesn't count.
Man, if you know, you know. Like that brother can coach, man.
Yeah, he seems to be pretty good. So we will, but hey, we'll wait and see how it plays out on the field this year for Alabama. How about Hugh Freeze? What did they write about Hugh Freeze? They had him ranked as the 14th best coach in the SEC. They say the ex-Ole Miss coach enters his third year back in the league and is already facing turmoil from fans after struggling through an 11-14 record and 5-11 mark in conference play during his first 2 years on the Plains. That said, Hugh Freeze hasn't shirked from the expectations, landing ex-Oklahoma QB Jackson Arnold out of the portal to lead Auburn's offense in 2025. If Freeze can get the Tigers moving in the right direction and deliver Auburn's first winning season since 2020, expect the hot seat talk to cool off considerably.
There's one word in all of that. If. It's got to happen.
It's possible.
It is.
It's on the horizon. You can see it.
Yeah.
You just got to go and get it.
You don't have to have Peyton Thorne as your quarterback anymore.
No, you don't.
So it's already
got to make
right
it work
direction.
with this guy, though.
Yeah. Who was also benched at his old school.
Fair.
But he does have a win against sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. It's okay. All right, let's go to the text line real quick, 205-834-9450. Get your thoughts on the college football coaching rankings. So this text comes in. Oh, man, this is a lot. All right. So they start off, after this year, DeBoer will be considered a top 3 coach in the entire country, which shouldn't be a surprise because look at what he did at Washington in just 2 years. They also add, where are Dabo and Ryan Day? Because Dabo has done more than Kirby and with less. I disagree with that. He has not won multiple national championships. But he says Georgia has some of the top talent in America, and Kirby struggles against Alabama. And then he says Clemson and Dabo gave Saban his worst beating at Bama. Why don't people want to give Dabo more credit? He says Kirby should have 4 natties by now. Okay, if you want to argue that Kirby should have won another national championship, I mean, okay. Probably shouldn't have lost on 2nd and 26 to Tua in 2017. I think that's a fair one. But, well, first off, the idea that Ryan Day has done more than Kirby Smart is, well, both of them can't beat one team. Ryan Day can't beat Michigan. Kirby can't beat Alabama. But at least Kirby beat the one time he beat them, it was in a national championship game. So we got to give him credit for that. He's also won multiple national titles. Again, like, your opinion's your opinion. I'm not saying you're wrong necessarily. I would be curious why you think Ryan Day has earned more credibility than Kirby Smart. He hasn't won as much. He doesn't have as good of a track record, and he doesn't play in the best conference in the country, or coach in the best conference in the country. That's just my thought on that. Let's see. When somebody texting in, if Hugh Freeze retires or gets fired this season, does Auburn go after Rhett Lashley?
I think Rhett Lashley would probably say no.
Be familiar? I still think Kenny Dillingham would be a name that you would go after, but I guess that's kind of similar to Rhett Lashley, with somebody that's been around the program and has now gone and took a team to the playoff last year. That would be interesting. Okay, someone's saying that Dabo deserves more credit than Kirby. And I think that's maybe more of a, if you want to look back in the past a little bit, you give it to Dabo as opposed to Kirby. And credit to Dabo. I mean, he took a Clemson program and turned them into, at one time, you could say, the best program in college football for a couple years.
Yeah, I mean, it's 1 and 2, Dabo and Kirby. You can have either one at the top, and I wouldn't be opposed. It's like the resume speaks for itself for both of them.
Josh from Tuscaloosa says Jackson Arnold is nothing more than Peyton Arnold 2.0. Or Peyton Thorne 2.0, excuse me. That would be a nightmare.
Ouch.
Don't want that to happen.
I hope not. Lord knows I hope not.
Wouldn't be good. Joseph chimes in. He says, my top 5 coaches in the SEC would be the exact same as their list. And he sent it in before us. So looky there. Do you work for the Sporting News, Joseph? But he had the exact same top 5 as them. He also adds, I agree with you guys about Drinkwitz. If they have another good season, he will leave for a bigger job. He'll be a big-time target, I would think. He's done quite well for himself at Missouri. And remember, it wasn't that long ago that we were like, man, is he on the hot seat? And now look where we are just, 2 or 3 years later. It's pretty remarkable. Somebody, fanboy, chiming in on recruiting. And he says, what's your thoughts on the prediction of the commitment today projecting for Alabama? And that would be 4-star edge rusher KJ Ford, who he is committing later today. He got those crystal ball projections to Alabama yesterday. So, I mean, it's looking good. Maybe a little under the radar. I don't think Alabama was in his top, when they do the graphic of, hey, we've got 5 schools left. I don't think Alabama was in one of those, but they are trending very well there. So potentially another big recruiting day for Alabama. But appreciate all of you chiming in with your thoughts on the text line about Hugh Freeze, the coaching rankings for the SEC. We'll be back on Monday at 6 a.m. live from SEC Media Days in Atlanta, Georgia. Can't wait to set the scene for you and have a big week of Media Days coverage. Mac and Cube is next.